This is John McAllister with the Coach's Corner, and today we're going a little bit different. He's not a football coach, not a baseball coach, not a college coach, but I want to talk with my minister at Trinity Evangelical. I'd like to say Reverend Jim Stauffer. He's been here for a while, tremendous with the kids, tremendous congregation. But Jim Stauffer is the son of a football coach, and he's a very, very good minister that cares about kids. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Today, I'd like to welcome in my minister out at Trinity Evangelical, Jim Stauffer, the Reverend Jim Stauffer, and over the years, we've seemed to gotten a pretty good relationship. So I'm going to be prejudiced because I think he does a really good job.
Well, thank you very much, John.
Well, you do, and big church, but so down to earth. Anyway, what we want to talk about today is kind of your perspective on what we can do to help young student athletes get closer to Christ, or even find Christ, or work with Christ, anything like that, to have him get in their lives. And so I thought it would be important. It's important to me, and I thought it would be important to you to give some of your ideas and philosophies. Okay.
Yeah, that's a big question there, John. There's a lot going on.
A lot of questions. Okay. A lot. But before we do that, I think it's really important. If you see Reverend Jim, he's not the biggest tight end you're ever going to see in football, but he is tall. But his dad was a football coach, a head football coach. And I can tell you what it was like when you get beat in games on Friday night, and what Saturday morning was like, and sometimes even Sundays. What was it like in your church, or excuse me, your family, Jim?
Well, it's a great question, because my folks were very committed to church. So come Sunday morning, we were always in church. But Friday nights, if you won the game, it was a great celebration. And if you lost, it was a great tragedy. And so Saturday mornings and film time, and my dad was off to the coaches' meetings and off to coaches' events and trying to do everything he could to make the team better. And I was blessed to be the ball boy and the water boy, and be on the sidelines with him for a lot of those years.
That's really good. I must interject here some connections and name dropping, but your dad played for Earl Bruce at Sandusky, right? Sandusky
right.
High School.
Yep. When Earl Bruce was the coach at Sandusky High School, my dad played on as a center on the line.
And Earl Bruce, really good man, but I'm sure your dad learned how to be tough. If he didn't, he wasn't going to be playing, right?
That's right. Well, that's how football was played.
And then he coached at some other schools, and then he went to administration. But let's go back to you and football. And you mentioned something before me. Your mom she kind of ruled the roost, didn't she, a little bit, as far as getting into church and things like that too?
Yep. So my mom was a good, the daughter of a Baptist preacher. So church for her was an absolute commitment. So on Sunday mornings, no matter whether you won or lost on Friday, you were there at church on Sunday.
It's good. That's really good. Okay, let's talk about, I asked you 500 questions in one, but what's the first thing you approach that you take as a minister and working with athletes?
Well, I just think recognizing that athletes have a tremendous amount of potential and are generally people who understand hard work and discipline. So to know right from the start, you've got a lot of common ground with athletes, whether they're in church or not, whether they're believers or not. They're people who generally want to be better. And I think ultimately, pursuing Christ makes us better. And so you've got that common ground to work with right from the start.
Okay, what do you do then as far as when you let's go back when you came to Upper Sandusky. Okay, what were some of your first approaches to kids? I mean, how did you reach out to them?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose in a sports setting, the fact that here at church we do a sports program, we do football and we do basketball. So you've got that opportunity to share devotions and pray with kids while they're doing sports was sort of the first connection I had coming here with working with kids in sports.
And so, and it just, do you keep in touch with those kids? I mean, through your Wednesday night program, Reignite, I would think you would see those guys in church. I mean, in your program, some of the kids that play basketball and flag football and things like that. So you would have contact with them then, right?
Oh yeah, it's great to be able to see those kids grow up. And when we first came, so 12 years ago, we started a kindergarten league for the basketball program. And so this year, some of those first kids are seniors. So
Wow.
it's great to see those same kids and cheer for them at the high school level, and be able to see their progression over time, and be able to say, I remember when you were in
Right.
kindergarten.
Right. And that's really, really good. How about let's go with coaches first. Your advice to high school coaches. Okay,
Yeah.
now we're living in a different world, a tough world, and things like that. Obviously, we know that. But what would be some suggestions you would give the high school coaches?
Well, I think just the recognition that for a lot of folks, for a lot of the men and women on your team, you are the father figure. So living with integrity, living with compassion, living with discipline, those are all things that the kids that you're working with get from you as a coach that they might not be getting anywhere else. So I think, coaches have a huge impact on those kids that they have with them, and their lifestyle. Even if you can't use the name Jesus, even if you can't pray in the locker room, you can be a witness in the way that you live, and the way that you handle yourself.
I think that's huge. Speaking of praying, we see more before games, and I don't exactly know the rule, but I know when I coached as a head football coach, we used the prayer before games and after games, and the after game was more of a thank you that no one got hurt and we blah blah, things like that. But one thing, your opinion on this, kids praying before the game. They'll come out, even college guys. I'll tell you, college football players more and more are finding Christ, more at least working with Christ. Sometimes I say that because working with is the ups and downs and bad and good and all that. But what's your opinion on praying after you come on the field? And college and pro guys do it too. I'm not so sure pro guys don't do it more. What kind of influence should that have, or your opinions on that?
Well, I think here, just knowing the rule is that the school can't make anybody pray. And that's, you got to live within the rules. But they also can't stop kids from praying. So for our young people to know they're allowed to pray, they're allowed to pray on their own, they're allowed to ask people to come pray with them. So just to encourage them to know that's the rule. Nobody can stop you from praying. And then I think, again, if you're going to do that, know that you're a witness. So you can't pray before the game and then, play the game in a way that reflects badly. So
Right.
As long as your lifestyle, as long as you're trying your best to live out the truth of that commitment, I'm all for prayer, obviously. And I pray for kids all during the game. So, nobody can stop you from praying.
That's interesting. I don't know exactly knew the rule on that. I mean, I knew that, they come down on people and there's a rule that you can't pray. But you're saying you can. It's just that the coach or the coach can't make you pray. He can't say, let's all bow our heads together and pray. He can be it can be around it maybe, but he can't make you. But you can pray on your own. So
Yeah,
that's really
anybody can pray on their own. As long as there are tests in school, there will always be prayer in school because they can't stop you from praying.
That's really good. It's really good. Okay, and then the kids, and we've talked about that. What would you think? What do you think would be a good way for a young man or young woman to get started? Doesn't really do much with Christ now, do much with church now. What would be a good way to get started?
Yeah, I think finding that role model, that person you can connect with. So if it's not your parents, if your parents don't take you to church, finding somebody who goes to church, and you're just going to have to ask. And I think a lot of people would be really encouraged by somebody asking them, what does it mean to know God? What does it mean to follow Jesus? And then trying to find a home church, trying to find, a group of people to connect with. And in schools, and especially sports, if you've got a fellowship of Christian athletes, an FCA group, or, a good youth group at a local church, those are the best places to find people who will help you in that journey.
Okay. Okay, we've talked about coaches and we've talked about kids. Now let's talk about parents. How do you think parents can help these young people?
So let me tell you a story, John, because I played football as a freshman in high school, and my dad was the athletic director and the former football coach. So I assumed that he would love me more if I was a great football player. And in my very first play, I broke my arm, shattered my arm, never played football again. And so the next year I ran cross country, which is also an incredibly difficult sport.
Especially at Perkins.
Well, and at this point we were at Wapakoneta, so we moved from Perkins to Wapakoneta, and Dad was there at the finish line, and it wasn't a Sunday school lesson, it wasn't a church service, it was his presence and just support that are a lesson I still remember to this day. And so I think for parents, the whole idea of to be encouraging, to be supportive, to be aware of how much pressure your athlete, your son or daughter feels, are all the incredible things as parents that we have to do to, demonstrate love and support to our kids. So that'd be my first and foremost encouragement to parents.
Be there, be encouraged.
Just be there and be encouraging.
And it's so great. Okay, we're going to finish in there in a second. This is good. Tell me about role models. How can a boy or a girl be a role model? Okay, he or she is really tight with Jesus, or really strong. How can she be a role model?
Yeah, I think.
Excuse me. I mean,
yeah.
There's a lot of talk about being a role, but how can they be a role model?
Yeah, and I think again the awareness that as a role model, you might not know it, but when people are watching you, they're watching how you react, they're watching how you live, they're watching whether or not you have integrity. That's what makes you a role model. And so there's nothing you have to do differently to be a role model. You just have to, live in a way that when others look at your life, they see somebody who's got grace or patience or discipline, and want to say, what, there's something about that person that I want to follow, and that makes you a role model. Everybody's probably way more of a role model than we think we know.
Okay, that's good. and coaches and teachers and people on the street. They're all should be as good a role models as possible and things. Okay, my last question. You're talking to the team before they go out on the field. You're getting ready to play carry, but you're playing carry. What do you tell the kids? What do you tell the football players?
I tell them, listen, boys, we're a family. We give our best. We do everything we can to help one another. Let's go out there and show them what we're made of.
Good.
Yeah, that halftime speeches, John, are how I learned to preach. watching my dad talk at halftime is my role model for preaching. So
you accused me of being a halftime speak guy. You told me that someplace. Oh, at the funeral, I think, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's really, okay. I always like one more question. How about the individual in track, or the individual in wrestling, or the individual in baseball who just struck out? Or let's go back to track. They've been beaten. They false started. They struck out. They got a mistake on a pin. How do you talk to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think here's where, as adults, we have to be very careful, because the impression we can give is that we love you more when you succeed. And that's easy to do when people are doing well, to sort of give that impression. But when they're not doing well, it's even more important to say, you know what? I still love you. I still think you've done a great job. I'm proud of you. You know, we're gonna learn from this, and the next time you're gonna do even better. And no matter how you do, it doesn't change how I care about you. So I think that would be my approach to somebody who's lost the game or lost the match or struck out, to say, you know what, you gotta keep going. I still care about you no matter what.
Well, Reverend Jim, I really appreciate you taking the 20 minutes here, or 17 minutes, and talking about these things. I think it's so important. And, we could probably go into detail more, but I don't think it's appropriate right now. I think what we've talked about is really appropriate.
Well, I appreciate the chance to be with you, John.
The ideal of a role model is huge, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.